raise your price by, let's say, 5% increments, and just wait until you have 20% of your customers leaving you. And then it means that you got to the optimal price.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
It's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the undeniable relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Maciej Kraus. And here are three things you want to know about Maciej before we start. He has a PhD in pricing. Now, like me, it's really in marketing, but we like to say pricing, and he actually said that to me. I love that. He spent a ton of time in consulting, including a stint at SKP, and he's run all of the major marathons twice. That gets me tired just thinking about it. Welcome, Maciej.
That's a great pleasure being here, you know.
It'll be fun. How did you get into pricing?
Actually, you know, like I always want to go into consulting, but first I thought, you know, if you want to consult someone, you should start, you know, just seeing how a well-managed company looks from the inside. So I started with a multinational, Nestle, for a couple of years. And then I moved to consulting, and then I know like SKP was establishing their office in Warsaw, Poland. I joined them, and yeah, this is how it went.
Yeah, and then you stuck into pricing. Why is that? Because
I think it's fascinating. And like I already had, you know, a couple of options just to quit and to do something else. But for some reason, you know, pricing is chasing me all the time.
Yeah. So you're currently a partner at a company called Movens Capital, which is a VC firm. And it was interesting because when I looked at their webpage, you actually emphasize pricing on the webpage. So how does that work?
Exactly. Because
go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's super important, you know, like for startups, because now I have two hats. One, I'm a partner with the VC and private equity, and second, I still, you know, do some consulting, you know, on the side, let's say. And like what we see quite often for the VCs and for the startups is that I don't know if you heard. Mark Andreessen, he once said that if there was one message that he would give to all the startups in the Silicon Valley, it would be raise your prices. And then, you know, I had a thought like, why is that? And I've seen it so many times speaking to all those entrepreneurs that they have this approach that they are, I call it, too hungry to eat. So like they think that if they start low, then everybody's going to love their product and then they can just raise the price. But as we both know, it never goes this way. So I think, you know, the monetization strategy is one of the key success factors for a successful venture.
Yeah, in a startup company, if you can't sell your product in the beginning at a reasonable price, you don't have a real product.
Yeah, this is exactly what I mean. For me, like pricing is the best validation for your product market fit. Like if you have to give away your product for free, what is it worth?
Yeah. I actually heard Kyle Poyer once say, it isn't product market fit, it's product market price fit.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I wrote an article on this one because I get this question so many times that I was just already, you know, like bored answering it all over again. That really it's product price market fit.
Yeah, exactly. And so what do you think the biggest problem is besides really low prices, right? Why do startups have really low prices? What's the biggest problem we see in those startups?
Well, I would say there are a couple of reasons, but probably one is that usually those guys, they have a technical background. So they think that just doing pricing is like unsavory, is detrimental to true technical innovation. And, you know, they feel like, you know, this is not something that, you know, really the smart guys do. Whereas I think, you know, we both agree that you should quite often start with your pricing and then build the product around it. So I maybe, you know, I don't want to put it so far, but just to put the price element into the component when you build all those technical, you know, bells and whistles.
Yeah. So I often think, I created something I called the Stiving Value Table. And essentially it links the problem that someone has to the value that they get of solving the problem. And you could do all of that before you ever build a product and say, what's the problem? What's the value of solving that problem? How much would somebody pay me? And now we can go build a reasonable solution.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so this is exactly the case.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so have you done mostly SaaS pricing recently, or for how long?
I would say for the last, let's say, 3 years, I do a lot of SaaS, but it does not mean that my all goes from the past, like retail and B2B, they don't chase me any longer, so they do.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm really excited about the pricing, probably because like it's something new to me, and it excites me because it's growing. There is so much kind of going on, so much innovation when it comes to pricing, to the revenue cycles, to how you build your pipeline, all those things. So and I really am fascinated about it.
I got to say, I agree completely. Probably 2 years ago, I jumped into the SaaS world. And as I'm studying it, I'm having aha moment after aha moment. It's just so interesting to see what's going on. So I ended up writing a book that'll come out later this year, but I'm excited about the whole field. What do you think is most interesting and different about SaaS?
Like, I think what I really love about SaaS is that it's not that you sell and forget, which quite often happens with just any other product. Really, you have to build the value on the go when you have the relationship with your customer. And I really love this concept. So it's not that you have to build some cool marketing around your product. It has to have I would say, the intrinsic value built into what you do. Otherwise, someone's going to cancel. So I think this is probably what excites me. Of course, like just the fact, that so many companies, they shift to subscription, it kind of proves that this is the model for the future.
Yeah.
And the other, looking from the just one other comment is looking from the like say owner's perspective. So the private equity or the VC companies with SaaS models, they have way higher valuations. So
yeah, that's a no-brainer. Yeah. So I like to say or describe what you talked about in the following way. In a traditional business, people cared that you bought their product. They actually never cared if you used it. In a SaaS business, we actually care if you use the product, because if you're not using it and getting value from it, you're going to churn out. You're going to stop paying us. We don't have a chance to get more money from you later in an expansion methodology. So it's a completely different mindset from I just have to win customers to I actually have to win and keep and grow customers.
You said something, I would say, like truly, important, because I see quite often with the SaaS businesses, they have this product kind of mindset. You just have to acquire customers, and this is the only thing you have to do. But actually, where the money for the SaaS model comes from is from the monetization and the retention. So, like, it's easy to give something to someone for free. You can acquire customers. You can get them, with those paid, marketing acquisition channels. But really, where the battle is how to make your customer use your product and really get the value from what you deliver. And this is, I think, one of the key mistakes that a lot of subscription businesses make. They apply the same kind of product logic. As long as we sell it and we get the customer on board, we are done. It's totally opposite with SaaS. At least, this is my experience.
Yeah, and another observation I can make in that area is for traditional business, or even for just winning a customer in the first place, we care a ton about perceived value. How does what's the value they perceive they're going to get from our product? But once someone buys in and starts using our product, now it's real value, right? Am I truly delivering value to that client so
Exactly.
they stay with us? So I find that absolutely fascinating. Are you seeing many companies who say, I want to go SaaS, but they don't really rethink their business model? They're just saying, I'm going to change the way I do billing or pricing, not really the business.
Yeah, and like recently, I was working for one of the car manufacturers, And this is where they got stuck. So they thought that as long as we just split, the total amount of money you have to pay for a car into monthly payments for the 5 years, we are done, and then, the thing is that you really have to change, your whole sales process, how you communicate with the customers and all that stuff. So like I see like a lot of companies struggle with the SaaS business model implementation, I would say, especially where your core business is very much like product old school driven.
Yeah, I think the hardware companies especially have this problem, right? They've got this big upfront cost. They want to try to make sure they capture their costs. It's a real challenge for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if all you're going to do is split up the payments for a car company, what's the difference between a subscription and a lease? Right? It's like the same thing, or financing the car.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, this is the question that based on my experience with especially, car dealers, is that they cannot explain it. So they really don't know what is the difference. And then customers get confused. So when you are overwhelmed with those different options that you cannot see the difference, then probably most customers would say, so actually, like my old car is still okay, so I don't need a new one.
Yeah, I haven't studied a lot of the companies, but I've looked at Porsche's subscription program a little bit. And so they offer things like, we're going to cover all the maintenance and you can swap your car whenever you want. And right, there's a whole bunch of advantages to subscribing to a car that you don't get if you buy one and finance it, or if you lease it. So I think companies, we can move away from cars, but I think companies have to rethink what's the business, what's the benefit the customer's trying to get, and how do I deliver more of that benefit on a periodic basis to my customers. So
exactly. And then, you also have to understand, what is the value delivered? And especially like for Porsche, there are probably a couple of things, I cannot disclose. But what probably might turn out is that what you really value is just the ownership part. So so you want to have the feeling that I own a 911. It's not that I can drive it, but it's just mine, my precious,
Yep.
So like it might be that the subscription model might work better with some other brands, let's say.
Yep. No, I think that's true. And that some people, let's say we're going to talk about a 911. Some people really want to own it. Some people just want to drive it and look cool driving it and swap it out. And so that's just segmentation. There's nothing at all wrong with offering both options.
Absolutely.
So beautiful. So another thing, when I asked you, what are you passionate about? You said COVID pricing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. At the very beginning, I just got so tired of talking about COVID, but nowadays, hopefully we're coming to the end of the whole pandemic with the vaccines that are out. What should companies be doing now, and what do you think is going to happen in the future?
I know that there's been a lot said about pricing and COVID and how to adjust your pricing for the COVID. But what I see with the companies that approach me is that, okay, so they kind of conceptually get it, but they don't know how to apply it in their life, So they are not, let's say, swift enough to make any changes. So this is what I've seen over those months. But now, like the other question that they ask themselves is, okay, so hopefully this whole thing is gonna get over. But so how do we prepare for when it's done? So what do we want to do with our pricing? And this is where I spend quite some time these days working with companies on how to think about what should be our pricing strategy when the reality changes, so that we are prepared and we just can press the button and launch it.
What's the new thing? What are they going to go launch?
I think, obviously it depends on the industry, but I think a lot of businesses that I work now with is that they need to kind of just convince customers to start purchasing. Because especially for the industries that were really heavily affected with the virus, what we're trying to think of is how to launch those, let's say, activation activities, so that we get those old customers that got kind of hibernated, or they just cut back on their spending, so that we get them back on track.
Yes. And so I could see, I guess my perspective, if I were thinking about COVID pricing in the beginning, the real question is what changed in your demand, right? Or do you have more people are buying because you're selling toilet paper and Zoom, or are fewer people buying because you're a restaurant and no one can go out in public? And so we're watching what your demand looks like. And then we look at the new normal coming. What is demand going to look like then?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what kind of changes should we be making?
Yeah. So like I'm recently working for a bit, hospitality business. So obviously they were very heavily affected with the virus. But what they're thinking is, so like we want to be ready when all the restrictions get just canceled. So how we, like, as quick as possible. Oh, we have a guest.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
That was my dog Jake that just walked in. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So how to get those like back on track as quick as possible.
Yep. Absolutely. Maciej, this has been a lot of fun. Can I ask the final question that I always ask? What's one piece of pricing advice that you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
I usually, like I say, it's easier to lower a price than to increase it.
Okay.
So that's why, it's always better to start a bit too high than a bit too low. If someone asks me for a single pricing advice.
Yeah. So can I push back on that for a second? Because I always tell people that's a myth. And here's why I say that. Because the only people who care are people who know your prices. And so there's nothing at all wrong with saying, hey, I'm going to increase prices tomorrow on all new customers because they didn't know what my old price was anyway. So it's just no big deal. Now, raising prices on existing customers in a SaaS business, that's tricky. I'm with you on that completely.
Okay. Yeah, but it's more like, this is the kind of answer I give to people who are not like involved in pricing. So if you just heard about there is this kind of thing. So like, give me this one, pricing advice. So this is usually what I say. And actually most people agree. So, and it's also for me a test whether you get pricing or not.
Yeah. Well, so the thing I love about it as a piece of advice is the biggest problem a lot of people have is they don't charge enough.
Yeah.
And so they tend, that's one of those platitudes that it's easy to agree with. Oh, it's easier to lower prices than to raise prices. And everybody nods their head and goes, yeah, that's right. And maybe that's motivation to charge a higher price. So that's awesome. Right. So I don't have any qualms at all about that. So.
Yeah. So this is usually what I say. And also, like, I can give you another, let's say 5 minutes or 1 minute pricing advice.
Oh, please go ahead.
And I really love it. So just raise your price by, let's say, 5% increments, and just wait until you have 20% of your customers leaving you.
And then
it means that you got to the optimal price.
Oh, keep raising your price by 5% at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Keep raising by 5%, because usually what you hear is that, okay, so I listened or I read, Mark's book, I raised my prices, and listen, none of my customers left me. So usually the answer is, so probably you still have a lot of room for price increases. So I say, like, increase it as long as you've got, 20% of your coming customers telling, we will not sign up or will not buy your product because of the price. So that means that you are probably somewhere around your sweet spot.
Yep. So a really nice way of saying that is if you win all the deals, your price isn't high enough.
Yeah. So this is a bit like a paraphrase.
Yeah. You got to lose some.
Exactly.
Maciej, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Well, these days it's easy to reach out to people. So just, LinkedIn, email, go to my company's website. So I think, if you want to reach out, you will gonna do it.
Excellent. And we'll have your LinkedIn link on our show notes. So it'll be easy.
Excellent.
All right. Episode 107 is all done. Now, listeners, I'm pretty sad that we haven't gotten a new review in a while. So would you please help out by leaving a review on whatever platform you use? That could be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podchaser. There's many of them out there. And finally, if you have any questions or comments about this podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.